Hello, everyone. Welcome to Exposed in Faith, where we talk about how the Lord is using convictions and His Word to grow us and posture us. I need to work on my intro script for real because I feel like I say something new every time. Basically, I feel a pressing to share how the Lord is convicting me through His Word. In addition to that, I also share what the Lord is revealing or illuminating to me in His text as I walk through His text. I'm currently walking through the Old Testament, so I'm going to be sharing a lot of what I'm learning firsthand as I walk through it. So today, we're going to take it back to Exodus 3, 1, 2, and 3, but 3 for real. So something that stood out to me immediately as I read through Exodus 3 was Moses' calling. So I'm going to start reading at Exodus 3 verse 1. Meanwhile, Moses was shepherding the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. So immediately in verse 1, what's standing out to me is that Moses is shepherding. So shepherding is obviously a big imagery in God's word. It is very symbolic of servitude, serving God's people, serving God's children, God shepherding His children and guiding and leading them to the kingdom. So immediately shepherding stands out to me because it's already setting Moses up as a servant, as somebody who is humble, who is humbly serving his father-in-law. So that reveals a piece of Moses' character immediately. And serving is a big part of ministry. And having a humble servant heart is a big character trait necessary for what he's going to be called to, which is to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. And in the same verse, in the second half of the verse, it says that he led the flock that he was shepherding to the mountain of God. In the version that I'm using the CSB version, but the fact that the text identifies the location, his end location, as the mountain of God is also significant because not only is he serving, but he's serving with purpose. He is leading his flock to God, not just to anywhere, to the mountain of God. He's leading them to the mountain of God. So there's a right view assumed there. Then the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire within a bush. As Moses looked, he saw that the bush was on fire but was not consumed. So verse 2 details a miraculous event that is occurring. There's a bush on fire. It says that Moses sees the bush. So he sees this bush on fire not burning up. A bush that's on fire that's not burning up. He's a shepherd. He knows how nature works. And he sees a bush that's on fire that is not burning up. And he doesn't freak out. The text does not say he freaks out. He runs away. The next verse says that Moses thought, he had a thought, I must go over and look at this remarkable sight. Why isn't the bush burning up? So his response isn't to run off. His response is curiosity. And in that, he says, I must go over and look. I must go over and look. So he's clearly seeing a miraculous situation happening. And instead of running off or even having thoughts of doubt as to what's going on, his response is to go over and investigate what's happening. So to me, it reveals that Moses has an open heart to God. It reveals his openness to believe in what is unbelievable. It reveals that he has an openness to a new perspective, to being curious about what cannot be trusted in a human perspective, because a burning bush would probably instill fear in somebody who didn't have an openness, a willingness to go beyond what the surface, investigate, to go beyond what is in front of him. He was curious. He displayed he was curious, he was willing, he was open to finding out what was going on, and he was not scared. It's showing that Moses has an open-minded. So we have a servant, a humble servant, who is also open-minded. Okay, so then in verse 4, the text says, when the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, when God saw Moses' response, a willingness to investigate, a willingness to look deeper, God called out to him from the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses' response, here I am. Here I am was also a big part of Abraham's journey. And we know that Abraham was a faithful friend of God, and he often presented himself readily to God with the same statement. And it's a sign of obedience. It's a sign of surrender. So I think we can assume that Moses knew God and was a believer because he wasn't scared off by the burning bush. So that had to be a greater power at play. And when he was called by God, he responded, "Here I am." So he knew God's voice. He didn't question who was calling him. He didn't ask who it was that was calling him from the bush. His response was, "Here I am." Those are the main things that stood out to me, is that God calls those who have a willing heart, those who display a posture of willingness. God did not call Moses until Moses showed a posture of curiosity. God did not call Moses until Moses walked over to the bush. Our response as believers is the one thing we have control over. How we respond to God is very significant. How we respond to God speaks to our faith. I want to go backwards in the text to chapter 2. So in chapter 2 verse 11, so this is after Moses is divinely sent and raised by Pharaoh's daughter. So chapter 11 starts when he's an adult or grown up. Years later, after Moses had grown up, he went out to his own people. So his identity remained and observed their forced labor. I think this speaks to Moses' character, is that he knew who he was. He identified with the Jews, even though they were enslaved and being labored so intensely. And he grew up in Pharaoh's house. Like, he grew up with privilege. He grew up with power. He could have took hold of that. But when he had the chance, he went back to his people. He identified with the children of God. So while he's there observing his people, he sees an Egyptian fighting a Hebrew, and he defends the Hebrew and kills the Egyptian, unfortunately. This also speaks to his character. He had a passion. His way of going about it needed some development, needed some work. Definitely was not right, but he had a passion for justice, which I believe is another character trait of disciples who are sent forth into the world to make disciples. There has to be a desire for justice. There has to be a passion to see wrong made right, because we're living in a world that is wrong, and we as believers look to Christ, who is right. So even in this, he's unfortunately responding in an aggressive manner that leads to terrible events. It displays a character of justice. His intentions are clearly to see what is wrong made right. He was defending, passionately advocating for his people. He was passionately defending something that he viewed as wrong, which I believe sets up the character of Moses that eventually flows into his calling. Because of the outcome of his passionate response, it's clear that he wasn't ready. So he eventually runs off in fear. He finds a new community. The way he even ended up in that community was because of his character and his heart of good. And he spends time in that community serving and shepherding. In chapter 2 verse 21, it says Moses agreed to stay with the men that he just helped out, and he gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. So it's clear that Moses served this man significantly well, enough that he gave Moses his own daughter. Moses always had the characteristics and the traits to be a leader for God, to be used by God. He just needed some time to be cultivated, to calm down a little bit, to age. Wisdom comes with age. Throughout these events in his adult life, in the little that is told, we start to see faithful traits in Moses. In every part of his history that is told, there are character traits that are aligned with spiritual fruit in Moses. And God evidently qualifies Moses for his kingdom mission by giving him the strength, the knowledge, the resources, and the reassurance in every way that he felt weak. As we find out in the rest of chapter 3 into 4, Moses was very hesitant and nervous to take on the calling, but eventually he does surrender and he serves God well. So those are some things that stood out to me about Moses' calling, and I want to share some of my thoughts on that. So if you have any thoughts as well, please do share them in the comments below. I probably missed something that I'm going to think of after I turn off this camera. I tried to make some notes to go off of. I think I got everything. Oh, another thing that's evident in Moses' calling is that his very intense mistake did not render him useless. And that's one thing about the Lord, is that he qualifies the people he chooses. And why is that? Because God sees into the heart of man. He sees the intentions behind the actions. He's the one who hones in our character to align with his. because if it was left up to us, we would all respond as Moses did. We would all respond in false ways. We would make more of a mess than not. He can turn anything into good, but we are in control of our response. How we respond to God is where we have control. It's where we have to show up, and that's where Moses showed up. And that's why chapter 3 verse 3 to 4 really stood out to me, because it revealed an example of how we are meant to respond when we see God's hand working. We should always respond with an open heart to what he has for us and a willingness to surrender to him. I think that's all. I think I got everything. Anyways, I've been talking for so long, so I'm gonna go ahead and end this video here. As always, please leave your thoughts in the comments below, and I will talk to you guys in my next video. Please like, comment, and subscribe so that we can get the word of the Lord out as far as possible, so that if even one person is inspired to go open up their own Bible and read for themselves, that would be awesome and amazing. And yeah, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.